Despite ongoing efforts for criminal justice reform, studies have shown that the United States continues to have one of the highest recidivism rates in the world. While this may not be an easy fix, it can be acknowledged that there are multiple factors contributing to repeated criminal behaviors, such as drug and alcohol abuse or mental health illness. Although our justice system cannot control the behavior of individuals, there are steps it can take to help deter them. We will learn more about those efforts later. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Domino Effect, in which we discuss the intersection of our community's top social issues with legal issues impacting us all. I'm your host, Jessica Thomas, a Florida family law attorney, and this is The Domino Effect. With all the formalities, walking into a courtroom can be quite intimidating, but it makes a difference to know that the person sitting behind the bench wants to help improve their lives. Making history as the first African-American woman to serve as a circuit judge in Orange County, Florida, and demonstrating through excellence and numerous awards and accolades, I am pleased to introduce the Honorable Judge Alicia Latimore. Thank you so much for coming today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Oh my goodness, what a outstanding resume and opportunity to have you here on The Domino Effect.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Can you start with telling us, I'm gonna ask you that question you've probably had 100 times. Did you always want to be a judge? Why did you become a judge?
I can't say that I always wanted to be a judge, but there did come a time where I felt that I could be much more beneficial to my community if I was able to sit on the bench. I realized that there were limitations to being an advocate, either defense or prosecutor, and that there were resources that were available to the judiciary through the state and through the community partners that may not necessarily be available to a judge, an attorney, right? So as a judge, I felt that I would be in a better position and able to make use of those community partnerships, the resources that were available, and to distribute them or use them to the benefit of the person who was sitting in front of me. So I wanted to be a part of what people call the system, right? And give a different perspective as to how the system can be a benefit to those who may find themselves involved, either in the criminal justice system or juvenile dependency or family, whichever division I was in. I wanted to be in that position to be able to help.
How long have you been doing it?
Oh, I've been on the bench since 2006.
Oh, goodness.
I know. Were you born yet? I don't know.
I would, right. Well, but it's incredible. I feel like that's a testament, right? So for some of our, our viewers that don't really understand how someone becomes a judge, and I'm not saying that the entire process, but some viewers are like, do you get a pick? Do you have to run? Mm-hmm. Can you just very briefly, how do you become a judge?
So there are two avenues in which you can become a judge. The first is an election, just like electing a president, for example. Okay. Someone can run a campaign and become a candidate to become a judge for a particular seat. The other route is to be appointed by the governor, and that requires the completion of an application. You'd have to do an interview with the Judicial Nominating Committee. That committee will send up a list of names to the governor, usually 3 to 6 names per seat. And then the governor's office will interview the candidate or all of those candidates and make a decision as to actually who is going to be appointed for the position. So there's the appointment route and the election route.
Now, with you being on the bench since the early 2000s, have you been just appointed for life? And I say this again for our viewers who maybe don't know. Are you going to be a judge for the rest of your life, or is it something that you have to continually work at to maintain?
So unlike federal judges or judges who are on the Supreme Court, state trial judges are appointed for a term of 6 years. Or elected for a term of 6 years. When we are initially appointed, however, that newly appointed judge will have to run for election the very first time that there's an election coming through, right? So you're brand new, appointed to the bench.
Don't get comfortable.
Right, that part, okay. And so you still have to participate in the election process. And then once you're past that initial election process, then you are appointed for a term of 6 years. And every 6 years, you're up for election again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, with you being the first, sometimes we hear that and it sounds like such an exciting spot to be in. Mm-hmm. Were there any challenges to be the first African-American woman on the circuit bench in a huge populace of Orange County, Florida?
Yes. Well, I think there's always a challenge when you're the first, regardless of what demographic, or are you a first woman, or if you're first African-American, if you're the first anything. When you become the first, you bring a different and unique perspective and presence to whatever field you're in, correct? And so it takes some type of, it takes a period of time in which everyone has to be accustomed to this change, this new person, this new perspective, these new ideas. And also for the first, it's a new experience. So I didn't have necessarily another Black female to go to in my circuit to say, hey, can you tell me how to do this and how to get used to maybe how others are trying to get used to me, right? I didn't have that, but I did have the benefit of just other colleagues who were able to let me know that regardless of being the first, that I was there for a reason, and that there were qualifications that got me there, not necessarily that I was the African American woman, right? And so that was the focus of being qualified and able and capable of doing that position. And surely anybody else who was in the position, I could go to and ask for some assistance and some support and direction. So yes, there's a challenge because you're by yourself right now, right?
An island of one.
But the goal is to be that trailblazer, hopefully, and that others will be able to come behind you so that you're no longer the only one.
I love that. I know we're going to talk a little bit more in our next segment about some of the courts and the actual day-to-day work that you do. But before we dive into that, can you tell us a little bit about some of the logistics? Maybe how many judges are there in Orange County? What kind of docket do you have? How many cases are you responsible for? And then lastly, if you can kind of tell our viewers, did you get to pick what court you want to be in, or are you assigned so that they know?
Yes. So with that, please don't hold me to the number.
Understood.
I don't always
Approximate.
keep up with the number. I believe we have approximately 62 judges currently in our circuit.
Okay.
Not necessarily only in Orange County. There are Orange County judges who are presiding in the county cases, and then and those are usually cases where there's, for example, individuals who have small claims matters,
okay,
or they are handling criminal cases where the punishment is a year less or no more than a year. Then there are circuit court judges, and those judges handle the more family law cases. They may handle cases in criminal court where the punishment is a year or more. And there are other divisions, of course, but just to explain that there are county judges and then there are circuit judges, and I believe we have a total right now of 62 or 67, somewhere in the 60s.
For how many people in Orange County?
Oh my
Don't
gosh,
we have a million?
Yes,
Do we have over a million?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so yes, and we are, listen, shout out to my colleagues, because we are holding it down for all the cases that we are handling. And so we, of course, have a request that more judges be assigned on more positions so that we can get more judges on the bench. And I believe the state is hearing and paying attention to the demands that are required in Orange County for us to keep up with the caseload. Lots of people moving to Orange County. When you have lots of people moving to your area, that means lots of people probably need to get into the court system. Right? So with that, we are allowed to make a request for which division we'd like to be assigned to. We have a rotation policy, and you are allowed to fill out your preference form and choose from in order your first preference all the way through approximately 11 different assignments that you can have as to where you'd like to be placed. Once you are assigned to a division, you must remain in that division for a minimum of 2 years. If you'd like to remain in the division a third year, you may choose to do so without being bumped. If you choose to remain in the division after that, you could potentially be bumped by an individual who has more seniority or someone who has been in the division, left to go do another division and wants to come back. So we have an established rotation policy. And that gives our judges an opportunity to have the experience of being in different fields and areas. We do not have a policy where you might have a judge who just stays in criminal for their entire tenure on the bench. It allows much more experience, much more diversity in our background and our ability to handle cases. And so with that, there's some benefit to having that rotation policy. Others say they prefer to just stay there and become almost experts in the field, right? So there are pros and cons to it all. But we all work together and we agreed to have that policy, and it's been there for a little while and it seems to be working.
Well, I like it as a practitioner. I like it. Get a little new blood every once in a while, a shake up. Thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. We'll continue with more of the Domino Effect after recognizing our generous sponsors.
A disproportionate number of Floridians don't have access to the justice system. That's why Funding Florida Legal Aid exists to bridge this gap. Their mission is to increase access for the underprivileged by funding legal services, developing innovative tools and programs, supporting legal aid providers and the courts. Because of their efforts, they've been able to help veterans facing homelessness, children in the foster care system, men and women who've survived domestic violence, and securing benefits for our elderly and disabled. Doing good for the greatest in need, because everyone deserves access to justice.
Welcome back to the Domino Effect. Earlier, we learned about the intention behind problem-solving courts. Now let's discuss the efforts to ensure the program's success. Thank you again for joining, Judge Latimore. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you again for inviting me.
Of course. Now, we touched on a little bit how voluminous the court system is at kind of that big scale level. Yes. Taking it more granular, tell us about those specific problem-solving courts. What are they? What does that mean?
Yes, problem-solving courts are just an added benefit to our criminal justice system, I must say particularly. And we also have problem-solving courts that are in our juvenile dependency court system as well. But the problem-solving courts are specialized treatment programs that offer opportunities for individuals to resolve either their criminal case or their dependency case in a manner that's non-traditional. Typically, when you're in the criminal or juvenile dependency system, you're working within an adversarial system, correct? As we all know, there's a lawyer on the state side and then there's a lawyer on the defense side, and typically they are going at odds with each other.
Right.
With the problem-solving course, it is a team approach, and we are working in a non-adversarial manner, which is my favorite way to operate within the court.
Collaborative.
Yes, let's all work together. And it really does show that we can be of assistance to helping individuals to become whole again, so that we do not see them repeat the same criminal behavior or offenses that would lead to the removal of their children from their custody. So problem-solving courts, as I indicated, is a multidisciplinary team approach in which we are addressing the underlying issue that led that individual to the criminal justice system or to abuse, abandonment, or neglect of their children, which led to them being a part of the dependency system.
Okay.
And we are dealing with the problem.
I love that.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, especially as a practitioner, and I do family law, you hear people say, it's not getting to the root of the problem. You're just putting maybe a Band-Aid on something. And so that's incredible. Now, how many problem-solving courts are there? You mentioned criminal, dependency. Can you tell us what those are and how many?
I can. We have a total of 5 different problem-solving courts here in the 9th Judicial Circuit. The 3 criminal problem-solving courts that we have is the Adult Drug Court Program, the Mental Health Program or Court, as well as the Veterans Treatment Court Program. In Family Dependency Court, we have the Family Dependency Drug Court, as well as our Early Childhood Court. So we have a total of 5, and we have some of those, if not all of them, in Orange County, and then we have some also in Osceola County. So we may have a total of approximately 10 dockets. That includes those problem-solving courts, as well as other courts that we handle in that team approach, although they are not identified as problem-solving courts.
Now, I know that we have a very significant population of veterans here, you know, retired veterans here in Florida. Tell me a little bit about this Veterans Court.
Yes.
How did that come about, if you know, or what has been your involvement in it?
Well, the problem-solving courts are statutorily created. And so Veterans Treatment Court, which is one of my favorites of all the problem-solving courts, and I hope the participants won't tell each other that, okay? But it is such an honor to work with them after they've given their service and put their life on the line for our country. And to be able to find a mechanism in which we are able to offer them support and assistance and connect them with the VA so that they may receive the benefits that they are entitled to. Veterans Treatment Court allows individuals who have been members of the armed services, and now we have found where we can receive them whether they are honorably discharged or not. There is a way in which we may be able to receive even those who are not honorably discharged into our program. And if they've committed a criminal offense which qualifies them, or if they're not disqualified by the type of offense that they've committed, and they qualify for coming into our program, then we are able to offer them the services of the team and help them to go through the criminal system without the detriment of being adjudicated as a felon, but also stabilizing them, offering them the treatment that they may need, dealing with their trauma or their post-traumatic stress disorders. And so with that, we are able to help them to get back reintegrated into the community as healthy individuals, and also connect them with servicemen who had the same experiences that they've had, and therefore build a community for them.
Now, you know, this is reminiscent, and I know that it's not necessarily part of our problem-solving courts, but immediately as you're describing it, it reminds me of my volunteer days at Teen Court.
Yes.
Of a court that gave you basically a second chance. I volunteered, and I remember, you know, hearing about those kids that just, you know, stole something from Claire's,
Right.
and they would do the jury duty and the jail tour and serve. So is it similar that when you talk about that relationship, I know it was helpful for me as a high school student
Yes.
to be volunteering with other kids my age. What does that impact for those veterans to have other veterans there who truly understand that kind of walk that they've gone through?
Right. It is amazing to see them and see them to transform and grow and just share their stories with knowing that they have been reintegrated into a group of individuals who really can relate to what they've been through and what they're even experiencing at the time. It is unfortunate that many of our veterans come back to their community and they're disconnected from their family, from their community, their neighbors, from services that they may be able to be entitled to. They often experience homelessness. They often experience unemployment and lack of ability to kind of manage the trauma that they've experienced. And so with that, now that they have a team that's helping them with that, and they don't have to worry about someone who's going to, you know, give them a difficult time because of the fact that they are no longer able to achieve those things they might have been able to without the experience of trauma. They know that they have a helping hand, and they know that connecting to the VA or some of their other organizations that we'll be able to offer them services is a benefit, and they absolutely enjoy it. They do. And you know, sometimes with like any participant in a problem-solving court or who's coming into a criminal justice system, you know, a criminal case, they're very suspicious. They're very they don't trust, you know, what's getting ready to happen, right? And so we have to, you know, build that trust with them. But then they realize that we really are here to help. And they begin to take advantage of how we can connect them to services that's going to make their life a lot more pleasant.
Wow. Well, I know we're going to get more in depth of some more of the drug courts in our next segment, but can you give me a final thought on some of our viewers who are maybe watching who want to provide services, not necessarily those individuals who would be going through drug court themselves, but are there ways that people can reach out to Orange County and say, hey, I'm a therapist, or hey, I run a nonprofit and I can provide services to veterans or people who this is their first time offense or young offenders? Mm-hmm. How do they do that? Can they just call?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we have a program manager, Lisa Vargas, who is our program manager, and we have also program coordinators who are over each one of the specialty courts.
Okay.
But the information can be found on our Ninth Circuit website, www.ninthcircuit.org. Plug for the circuit, okay? But you can go on that website and find out a lot of information about the programs, as well as how to contact Lisa Vargas, our program manager, and offer any services that you'd like to see if you might be of benefit to our participants. And she can also explain the needs that we have, additionally the process in which someone may be able to become engaged in helping our participants.
Oh, I love that. Well, don't go anywhere. We would love to talk to you more about some of those courts you mentioned.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm here.
Wonderful. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break.
A disproportionate number of Floridians don't have access to the justice system. That's why Funding Florida Legal Aid exists to bridge this gap. Their mission is to increase access for the underprivileged by funding legal services, developing innovative tools and programs, supporting legal aid providers and the courts. Because of their efforts, they've been able to help veterans facing homelessness, children in the foster care system, men and women who've survived domestic violence, and securing benefits for our elderly and disabled. Doing good for the greatest in need, because everyone deserves access to justice.
Welcome back. We are joined by the Honorable Judge Alicia Latimore, who has been so generous and provided us with a wealth of information regarding problem-solving courts. Thank you so much for coming back again with us, Judge Latimore. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here again with you.
So these courts sound amazing.
They are.
And it almost sounds like what the legal system is supposed to be, I guess.
Well,
like, you know, I hate to say it like that, but it sounds like to really fix the issue. How do you get involved? How can I, not that I'm, knock on wood, but if I am in a situation that one of these courts handles, can I raise my hand and say, I would like to go to problem solving court, please don't send me in there?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a referral process.
Okay.
And surely there are criteria in which an individual would be eligible to participate in our program. A referral can be made by anyone. If you'd like to raise your hand and say, refer me, please, you can do that, as well as an attorney at the state. The court itself can make a referral to have someone assessed to determine whether they meet the criteria to be in the program. We typically handle in the criminal justice system, those criminal cases, we are receiving misdemeanor or lower level felony offenses. If you are committing a heinous crime, you're not going to be eligible.
I won't be able to
no,
go?
I'm sorry. So be good.
Okay, understood.
Behave yourself, okay? All right, so with that, we are handling those type of offenses that may potentially make that individual eligible to come into the program. Additionally, we do not receive cases where there are violent offenses. So if we're speaking of anything that involves a firearm or aggravated battery or anything that may be considered violent, the case is not likely going to be eligible to come into our problem-solving court program in the criminal cases. In those cases where it is a dependency case, we will receive those cases if they meet the eligibility, and typically the only thing that might disqualify someone in a dependency case is if there are allegations of sexual abuse, or if that individual has a mental health issue that would not allow them to be able to be compliant with our program. If that mental health issue is so significant that they would not be able to be in compliance, then that individual may not be accepted. And those two are also applicable to criminal cases if there are sexual abuse allegations or significant mental health disorders that would not allow them to be stabilized and participate. So we are offering, again, an opportunity for individuals to be able to address and be able to resolve, not maybe completely, because recovery is a lifetime process. We want to have them be able to achieve sobriety in adult drug court, but also be able to maintain a lifelong program. Know who it is and where it is that they may need to go to get resources, understand triggers that may create instances where they want to use. We always talk about people, places, and things, so those things need to change. Mental health court, we're trying to get them to be compliant with their mental health treatment as well as their medication management. And in our Veterans Treatment Court program, we have, of course, in both of those or all of our problem-solving courts, we may have co-occurring disorders. So someone may have a substance abuse disorder as well as a mental illness that they need to address and receive treatment for. So with that, in all of our problem-solving courts, and particularly in veterans courts where we're dealing with most likely trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder, we want to make sure that they are receiving the mental health treatment, therapy, individual or group, and any medication that they might need to assist them.
Now, you mentioned earlier about a team that's helping with these services.
Yeah.
Is a large team member the Orange County Legal Aid Society?
In our dependency cases, absolutely. All right, we could not do it without the Legal Aid Society offering the assistance of their guardian ad litem program attorney, who is at all of our cases. They are present for our staffings as well as the actual court proceedings. Additionally, we have volunteer guardian ad litems who are from the Orange County Bar Association, who volunteer their time to be the guardian or representative for the child and what is in that child's best interest. And that is so critical when we're speaking of being able to offer services that are not only going to benefit the parents, but also our focus, particularly in early childhood court, where we're dealing with families who have children between the ages of 0 and 5, offering them the main intervention of child-parent psychotherapy to address bonding and attachment, and ensuring that all the trauma that the child and the parent has experienced is being addressed, so that when the child goes back home, they go back to a healthy parent, as well as the parent is able to identify those instances with the child. Even if they're an infant, they will give you cues as to when it is that they are in stress and need attention. So yes, guardian ad litems are critical, and we are so grateful for these services of the Legal Aid Society. I mean, this community just benefits in so many ways. That's a different show, I'm sure, in regards to what the Legal Aid Society brings to our criminal justice, or our justice system as a whole.
You sound so passionate about it. Did you have an integral role? You said it's statutory, but is this one on your sheet of 11? Do you put this at the top near your sheet of 11?
Early childhood court is definitely one of my favorite, and we so lovingly call it baby court, okay? And I always refer to it as baby court because we're dealing with the babies. And I'm kind of different. Children are a party to those cases, those juvenile dependency cases. By statute, they are a party to the case. But we often excuse them from the proceedings. One, because if they have to go to school or daycare, they don't necessarily want to be in a courthouse. However, with baby court, I always say, how can you have baby court if you don't bring the baby? Right? So it does give me such joy to be able to see, and just to see how the children bloom and blossom in parents who are healthy and loving and nurturing to them. But baby court has a particular particular special place in my heart because I was instrumental in bringing the early childhood court to the Ninth Judicial Circuit. And the first day that we had court was my mother's birthday, who was not here with me anymore, but it was on her birthday. So I will always remember that day and what we were able to accomplish for our community by bringing early childhood court to the dependency justice system here.
I cannot thank you enough for everything that you have done for Orange County, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It is such an incredible walk to be a practitioner, to your point of people coming behind you. As another lawyer, another African-American female, you are truly inspirational in the fact that you take on so much more than just the four corners of what your job description may be. It's really appreciated in our community.
I appreciate that. It is absolutely my pleasure to serve my community. And I think one person at a time, one step at a time, we can really make a significant change if we put our heart in it and we just care about our fellow human beings. And I think that that's why I have such a desire to be a part of problem-solving courts, because when we didn't have the problem-solving courts, I would always leave in court, regardless of what the resolution was, thinking, we're missing something. We're missing something. And that's why we would see those individuals come back. And so the whole purpose and the benefit of problem-solving court is when you deal with that underlying problem, recidivism rates go down, community becomes safer because they're no longer committing those criminal offenses. They're no longer abusing their children. They're no longer dealing in those criminal behaviors that they were before. So it's absolutely my pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Now, one last question before I let you go. You have been amazing. Tell me, have you had the chance, since being on the bench in 2006, to see someone who has experienced one of your problem-solving courts in their happy place, recovered?
I get to see it almost every other week. I do. We have graduations. We celebrate our graduates at the hearings where they're there with their fellow participants. We acknowledge them. We give them a certificate. We give them a medal with a purple ribbon, because purple is royalty, right?
I love it.
So we give them their own medal. If they're with the veterans, we'll give them an armband, as well as we give them a coin, typically that's offered in 12-step programs that identify that, this is just the beginning of their journey, right? So we absolutely have the opportunity to do that. Sometimes our graduates will come back and visit with us. We tell them at their graduation that we are your team. Even though you're done with this program and I'm either dismissing your case because you were on a diversion track, or I'm early terminating your probation because you were on a post-plea track, and so now you can go, but we want you to remember we are always your team. So if you need anything in the future, please call that number. Somebody's going to answer, and we're going to do whatever we can to be able to offer you resources or give you some direction so you can maintain what you've achieved and how much you've grown throughout the program.
What a happy story.
Yes.
Thank you so much for everything you've done.
Absolutely.
I hope a lot of our viewers are raising hands
Yes.
and saying, put me in this one. Yes. It's an incredible program, and thank you for all you do for Orange County.
Well, thank you. I thank Orange County for having me.
Absolutely. Although our community is plagued with many social challenges, it's good to know that there are leaders who are willing to use their positions and be the change we want to see. I want to thank the Honorable Judge Alicia Latimore for joining us in this discussion and providing us with some hope that things can get better. To our viewers at home, at work, or wherever you are, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again for the next episode. I'm your host, Jessica Thomas, and this is The Domino Effect.
A disproportionate number of Floridians don't have access to the justice system. That's why funding Florida Legal Aid exists to bridge this gap. Their mission is to increase access for the underprivileged by funding legal services, developing innovative tools and programs, supporting legal aid providers and the courts. Because of their efforts, they've been able to help veterans facing homelessness, children in the foster care system, men and women who've survived domestic violence, and securing benefits for our elderly and disabled. Doing good for the greatest in need, because everyone deserves access to justice.
The Legal Aid Society has existed for over 60 years, providing legal representation to clients on issues similar to those discussed in this episode. The community must know that when faced with legal troubles, you are and should still be able to receive high-quality legal representation and access to justice, regardless of your income. If you have received notice of overpayment from the Social Security Administration, or if your Social Security checks have stopped, contact the Legal Aid Society to schedule an appointment. If you are seeking assistance on a legal matter, you may also contact the Legal Aid Society law firm by calling 407-841-8310. The Legal Aid Society is a nonprofit law firm that relies significantly on volunteerism and donations. For more information on how you can support this worthy organization, visit legaladocba.org. Today, thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Domino Effect. And remember, perpetual goodness goes a long way. Join us again next time.